September 7, 1876. Northfield, Defiance. The James Younger Gang attempted to rob the First National Bank in Northfield, Minnesota. The raid stood out as a defining moment in the decline of one of the most notorious outlaw groups of the 19th century. The gang, led by Jesse James and Cole Younger, had conducted a series of successful robberies across the Midwest. They targeted banks, trains, and stagecoaches, gaining a reputation for violence and daring. The decision to attack the Northfield Bank was part of their effort to secure a large payout, yet it marked the turning point that brought their criminal enterprise to its end. The bank stood in a small but prosperous farming community. On the morning of September 7th, 8 gang members rode into town. 3 entered the bank, while others stood guard outside. Inside, they demanded that the cashier open the vault. The employees, however, refused to comply. The bank teller, Joseph Lee Haywood, displayed remarkable courage by declining to reveal the combination even under threat of death. His resistance stalled the robbers and prevented the loss of the bank's assets. Meanwhile, outside the bank, local citizens quickly realized what was happening. Residents of Northfield armed themselves with whatever weapons they had available, including rifles and shotguns. Instead of fleeing or remaining passive, the townspeople took immediate action. They fired on the gang members guarding the street, creating chaos and disrupting the robbery. The gunfight that followed lasted only minutes but was intense and decisive. 2 townspeople, Haywood and Nicholas Gustafson, lost their lives during the incident. However, the defiance of the citizens forced the gang to retreat without the money they sought. The escape turned into a disaster for the outlaws. Pursued by posses and law enforcement across southern Minnesota, the James Younger Gang could not find safety. During the chase, several gang members were killed. The Younger brothers, Cole, Jim, and Bob, were captured after a gunfight near Madelia, Minnesota. Badly wounded and unable to continue, they surrendered to authorities. Jesse and Frank James managed to escape the state, yet their network had been broken. The capture and death of key associates meant that the organization could never recover its former strength. The Northfield raid carried historical significance beyond the immediate loss to the gang. It demonstrated the capacity of local communities to resist organized crime. At a time when law enforcement resources were limited and communications slow, the role of citizens proved critical. The armed response of ordinary people stopped a well-known gang that had previously escaped punishment for many crimes. Northfield's example became a story of courage told across the nation, illustrating that outlaws could be defeated by collective action. The failed raid also signaled the end of the era of notorious Civil War-era guerrillas who had transitioned to crime. Jesse and Frank James had roots in the Confederate guerrilla warfare of Missouri, and many members of the gang shared similar backgrounds. Their attacks on banks and railroads symbolized resistance against the expanding institutions of post-war America. The Northfield defeat, however, showed that their style of outlaw rebellion could no longer survive in a changing society. Communities, supported by state authorities, now possessed the determination and resources to fight back. For Minnesota, the event became a part of state history and identity. Northfield preserved the story of its citizens' stand as a symbol of civic courage. The bank, the site of the robbery attempt, became a landmark. Annual commemorations remember the day when ordinary townspeople stood firm against armed outlaws. For American history more broadly, September 7, 1876 marked the collapse of one of the last major bands of post-Civil War criminals and the rise of a stronger commitment to law and order in the expanding Midwest. The James Younger Gang's attempted robbery of the First National Bank in Northfield demonstrated the limits of outlaw power and the strength of community resistance. The courage of individuals like Joseph Lee Haywood and the quick action of armed citizens altered the course of the gang's history. The event highlighted the transition from a period of widespread frontier lawlessness to a more organized and defended society. The raid's failure ensured that September 7, 1876 would be remembered as the day a small town ended the dominance of one of the most famous criminal groups in American history. For enthusiasts of historical ephemera, visit history-collectors.com to find collectibles that might complement your collection. You can own a piece of history.